appreciate your point that it's a backdoor entry to seeking subsidy. We fully appreciate that. Our limited point is that, my submission to you, madam, is that if it is so, if you find the claim of the private sector to be credible, that it is very loss making, then instead of floating it on PPP on the structure as it exists today, let's take time, sit back and find out whether this is the best project. That's where we came to project development. When you say project development, we need to do some bit of homework, hard homework, to find out whether the project is required in the first place. If it is required, what sort of benefits are we expecting? Is it economic benefits? Is it sort of externality we are talking about? Or is it something the user can capture, in which case involve user charges? If this user charges is not possible, then we are talking externality, where somebody who is using that will not pay for it, then we need to have other mechanisms. I mean, I fully agree with you, it cannot. But my only point is, instead of saying PPP is a backdoor entry, probably we can take this occasion to redefine the project and relook at it. Probably that gives a good opportunity for us to withdraw the project from the market as it exists today and probably reinvent the project.
No, I'm not against PPP. All I'm trying to say is this, let it not result into. This is the actual experience of the last 5 projects I have done, both economic analysis and finance analysis, and I was frustrated as an economist. If this is a PPP, what is the use of private sector participation? I'm not disagreeing with you, or I'm not arguing with you, but this sort of misunderstanding or misinterpretation, if any, needs to be clarified.
Needs to be clearly said. It's not public-private partnership. I think we should do that.
I'm Raghutam Rao from i-maritime consulting services. I'm actually repeating a point that was made because I think it was not answered, at least I didn't get I didn't hear the correct answer. I think if you're recommending overarching change in the regulation, that is fundamentally saying that move away from government as a doer to a facilitator and all of that it involves. I think the study or this whole seminar, the output should also comment illustratively what will happen to tariffs and charges. Because if we are moving away for private money to come into, private money will come in only with profit motive, and if the user charges go up substantially, or it's not very clear as of now how they will go, then I'm afraid this sector may go well the way power or electricity sector has gone. It's not that the gains in the tariff, or the reduction in tariff did not come about due to efficiency gains as was envisaged for a variety of reasons. Now, if that is the way this sector would also go, the port sector would also go, then we would well have a problem. Therefore, I think the request for some light being thrown in this study on user charges, even if they are illustrative and not exhaustive, would be fairly useful.
Now, first of all, concerns noted, but a small departure from what you said. We are essentially trying, we are doing this context of port sector. So let me restrict my discussion to the port sector. What we are basically saying in the slide also, port tariff is a misnomer. It doesn't say many things. And port tariff, as it is regulated in India, is a very, very small component of the entire maritime chain. Now, I can give you some illustrative examples to highlight my point. If a terminal operator let's say a shipping company becomes a terminal operator, he has enough ways and means to recover the total revenue, quote and unquote. So, rather than seeking to say tariff shall be minimized, the focus when we study should be system cost minimization. Again, we had a problem. Actually, we didn't go through the slides as we presently went back. That throws up a very fundamental issue in the Indian port sector today. What should be the objective of port reform? I think we briefly covered that. To make sure that the middle class service delivery to Indian trade at a competitive cost. Now the focus is just not on tariff, but to create a value for money business proposition in the port sector like other businesses. Because we found in the limited period of our study, we found no matter what the country does for import tariff rationalization, it doesn't work unless the weakest link is attended to transport. So as long as, I'll give you an example again, Musk, there's a vessel by name Regina Musk, which is 8,000 boxes. Now this was commissioned into service around 4 years back. The first port of call was Singapore. And this was in spite of the fact Singapore port, the tariff was highest. I mean, as i-maritime pointed out. The reason is, the standing cost per day of ship is close to $50,000. If he goes to Singapore port, he gets discharged in 6 hours. He has 6 ship-to-shore key cranes being operated on both sides on a passive pension terminal, and is able to dispose of the ship in 6 hours. See, the economic gain at $50,000 on one-fourth, let's say $12,500. That is the advantage Singapore port is able to give compared to probably an Indian port which may be able to turn out in 2 days, where the cost goes up to $100,000. So even if I charge a zero tariff, I'm not going to attract it because still the system cost is high. So what we are trying to do in this particular study is to ensure a favorable competitive framework, create a competition at all levels of the port industry. In fact, if you see the other slide, what we are saying is, in fact, we have not covered it in the full dose of our recommendation. Liberalize services at every level. Port terminal should compete. Port authority should compete between locations. Port terminal intra-port should be there. Let licensing, all this speedboarding, all this business be open to competition. The moment you have a competition at all chains, we believe that system cost will be high. That's the only limited point.
Well, I don't disagree with your approach. In fact, I fully endorse it. My only question is, did the study validate that assumption? Or is it just a leap of faith? Because unbundling has not worked everywhere.
I have to make a gender biased remark if the crowd could permit. I remember Philip Kotler in the early management days. When a woman buys Stockholm powder, she buys coke. I'm sorry, I'm being gender discriminated.
Probably I can add a few things. We had done logistics cost analysis as part of the total why the cargoes are going to shift. And in many places we realized that the advantages which people have in terms of logistics costs by shifting or by having another mode of transport or getting a larger size ship or getting a deeper draft, so many, is far more than the tariff. So what effectively comes is, even if you see sectors develop, as he's explaining, sectors develop in different stages. So the next few years, it appears that tariff may not be a sufficient issue. The key issue will be creating of capacities based on logistics cost, which reduces the overall cost of the shipper. In case of NSICP, we know many shipping lines switched over in spite of it having a higher tariff, which is just next to JNPCT. So these kind of examples are there. Maybe as the capacities become large, there are a lot of competition comes in, then the tariff, probably that will be the second phase of development of the sector.
I'm not against tariff. I think I stand corrected by cost of ownership coming, cost of usage coming down. I think that's a fair and right measure. The issue really is, has that been validated by the study, or is it just hope that it will happen? That's my
We have done, as part of our work, logistics cost analysis. I'm sure they have also touched upon.
And another thing which goes unnoticed in Indian ports is that invisible cost. Invisible cost is sufficiently well understood term in this particular fraternity, right? Now, the best way to check invisible cost is not an executive fiat to create competition. Basically, there's a rent-seeking behavior on the part of the economic agents. When I say rent-seeking behavior, I'm using a classic principle of economics. Any factor which is in short supply has a rent-seeking behavior to seek something over and above the normal rate of return. The moment you create a competition between ports, that rent-seeking behavior of the intermediaries, quote and unquote, disappears. So the total system cost of visible and invisible costs come down. Indian ports could become globally competitive.
See, when we're talking the cost, I mean, any shipper will send his cargo to a port of his choice, where the cost of transportation is the minimum. It covers all facets, finger-gated for everything there. So this particular tariff charges, I don't think should be given so much of importance. Secondly, now, if for the state, for the